Hi everybody, so my name is Sacha Greif, and I'm here today to talk about the state of JavaScript and what I've learned about JavaScript and just web development in general through running web development surveys. So a little bit more about me. I actually live right here in Japan. Anybody want to guess the city? So, yes, it's Kyoto. That was a trick question. I wanted people to guess Sapporo or something. But yeah, it's Kyoto. We actually get snow sometimes. So, good job. And in Kyoto, I work on surveys, like I said. So what do I mean by that? Well, every year I will ask web developers like yourselves a bunch of questions about what frameworks they use, which features they've heard about, are they happy or not, and a lot of other topics. And then I take all that data, I process it through code, through APIs, through an internal dashboard, and a lot of other things. And then the end result is a report, which I publish with nice charts that gives you access for free to all the data in a nicely presented way. Now, when I explain this to people, usually their question is why I do that and how I got the idea to do that. And to understand, you have to go back to 2016, which was the beginning of our current modern JavaScript development era. So back then, you had older frameworks like whatever, Backbone, Knockout, but you also had newer options like React, Angular, Vue, and it was quite confusing to know what to pick and to know where to invest your time, right? So people were talking about JavaScript fatigue. And that was my initial motivation behind doing these surveys, figure out where to invest my own time, and in the process I was hoping it would also help others with the same problem. Now, of course, we already had things like NPM download counts or GitHub stars, but these stats only gave you like a partial view of the reality, because sure, maybe React is being downloaded at a much higher rate than Vue, but what if people don't actually like React? Or on the other hand, what if they are super passionate about Vue? And by the way, I use React, so I'm just using those as examples, nothing against the framework. But I wanted to capture not just experience, so whether people had heard of a framework or used it, but also sentiment. Like, sure, you've heard about Vue, but are you interested in learning it? Or maybe you've used React, but was it a positive experience or a negative one? And so that's what led to the first ever State of JavaScript survey all the way back in 2016. And since then, I've kept doing those surveys. And now there's 6 of them. So the State of JS, state of CSS, state of HTML, but also the state of React, state of Web Dev AI, and state of devs. So each with its different focus on a different part of web development. And we are up to over 45,000 responses combined for the last round of surveys. So it's getting to be a pretty decent sample size. Now, I've talked about my motivation for doing these surveys. I also want to talk a bit about the principles, or maybe my philosophy when I ran those surveys. And to describe it, I would say I try to use the web to solve survey challenges. So let me give you some examples. For example, I want to try and make survey taking itself useful and maybe even a little bit fun for people, right? So one way I do that is with a feature called the reading list. So as you are taking a survey, if you run into something you don't know about, like you don't know what string match all is, you can add it to your reading list. And at the end of the survey, you will get a recap of all those features alongside links to resources like MDN, can I use, and you can even receive your reading list in your inbox as an email. Another thing we can do, show you code examples as you are taking the survey, again to help you learn about new features or maybe remember what a feature is, or even show you the baseline status of a feature. And for those of you who were here yesterday and saw Kadir's talk, well, this is just one more place where baseline is being used. Another principle is to let users explore the data, not just passively consume it, but actually customize it to their needs. Because sure, I can show you like a static chart, in this case salaries, yearly income for the 2023 state of JS, but maybe you have other interests, maybe you want to dig deeper. And you can actually do that. So you can bring up a filtering UI and let's say narrow down the view to respondents who are women. And this gives you a side-by-side comparison of all respondents and women's respondents. And that is possible because the surveys are not just built from like a static CSV or JSON dataset. They are actually powered by an API that you can query through the surveys, but it's also a public API that anybody can query to reuse the data. And then finally, I also want to let users dig deeper into the data. And what I mean by that is that, in a typical survey, you'll have questions where you pick an answer from a list of predefined options, right? But sometimes it's also just a text field where you can type in any random nonsense you want. So what do you do with that data? You have to somehow process it into a usable list of results. But when you do that, you lose that granularity, that details of all the individual answers that people typed. And now if you're publishing like a PDF report or something very static like that, if you have 398 answers mentioning Rust, it's not really feasible to include all of them in that report. But this is the web, so we can do that. Again, thanks to having a dynamic API. We can let you, open up those answers and then even filter them by subtopic, stuff like that. So the idea is really to leverage the web to create a more flexible, more powerful form of survey report. Now, by now, hopefully, you can understand what I do and why and how I do it. So I actually want to go out of the slides and show you the, oh, okay, that doesn't work. Let's see how I can make that full screen. No? Okay, it doesn't want to go full screen. I need the little music, like technical difficulties. How do I do that? Why is it not full screen? Oh, maybe I can. Is there any staff that can help me? Chrome をフルスクリーンしたいけど。Chrome をフルスクリーンしたい。これかな。これで。OK です。じゃあ、 Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so now that we're in the browser, we can actually look at the actual data from this year's State of JavaScript 2025 survey. And this survey just concluded like last week. So this is an exclusive preview of the results. They're not published anywhere publicly. And if you talk about what you saw in this room today, outside you will get in deep legal trouble. Not really. Just kidding. But yeah, let's talk about front-end frameworks because that's always like the main attraction. And so this is the data for this year. And as you can see, there's a pattern that will become very common, which is that there's an incumbent, established player, in this case React, that's at the top, and then further down other options. In this case, Vue and Angular. One thing to note is that since 2023, Vue has actually overtaken Angular to be number 2, which is it's a good job for the Vue team. I think they're doing a great job. But remember, I said that the point wasn't just to collect like usage data, because you could get those stats from NPM, but also collect how people feel about the things they're using. And now if we switch to satisfaction, you can see it kind of tells a different story, right? Because although React has been number 1 in terms of usage since 2016, 2017, satisfaction has been dropping a little. And it's still high. 72% is not bad by any means. But compared to other frameworks, it is lower. And so I think this doesn't mean React itself necessarily is doing something wrong. I think rather it shows a pattern that's very common for established frameworks or technologies in general. And there's 2 things going on, which is one, as the technology gets more mainstream, it's confronted to more real-world use cases, right? So the little React side project you built in 2017 now has millions of users across the whole world, and you have to worry about performance, security, stability, maintenance. And so it's not so much that React has gotten worse. It may also be that your experience is different because the problems you work on are different. And maybe that's what's making React a bit more frustrating to use. Another factor to consider, if you look at, let's look at ranks now. And you can see Solid, for example, is number 1 in terms of satisfaction, and has been for a while. Now, Solid is interesting because Solid uses JSX as well, if I'm not mistaken. And so projects like Solid can come along and learn from React's mistakes and take the good, like JSX, and leave other aspects that maybe aren't working as well behind and replace them with other things. So in a way, I think it's fair to say that Solid is also standing on the shoulders of React, and that explains why their rankings have evolved the way they have. But respondents also had the option of mentioning other frameworks. And that's always interesting to look at because that's how you discover new things. For example, number 3 here is Ripple. Has anybody heard about Ripple before? By show of hands? Yeah, 1 person. So I didn't know about it before, but who knows? I wanted to highlight it because who knows? Maybe nobody will ever hear about it again. Or maybe 10 years from now, it will be at the top of that chart, having replaced everything else. And if that happens, then you can say you heard about it first. Now let's talk a little bit about meta frameworks. Meta frameworks are the things we use for things like server rendering, backend APIs, and so on. And again, similar pattern to before. You have one at the top, which is Next.js, and then other ones below, Nuxt, Astro, SvelteKit, and so on. But again, if you only look at usage, that doesn't tell the full story. Because in terms of satisfaction, things aren't looking as good for Next. And again, I think part of it is because Next.js is used more widely, so Next.js developers are confronted to more complex problems. But also, it's fair to say that Next.js itself is more complex. And that's great when you are dealing with that level of complexity and you want something really powerful. But if you're not, then all that power can get in the way and lead to a worse developer experience. And then there's also maybe issues with Vercel, who make Next.js and can be a bit controversial sometimes. But other ones, yeah, which one is that? Astro, number one. Astro has gained a lot of ranks in usage, and even if you look at the values here, you can see it's been steadily gaining adoption. And I wouldn't be surprised if that keeps going up and maybe even accelerates. Now, one item that's not on the chart is TanStack Start. Who here knows about TanStack Start? Who here has heard about it? Wow, a lot of people. Has anybody tried it? Oh yeah, a couple people. So what happens is the way things get into the survey as things get adopted into the survey is that people will mention them as free-form entries one year, and then if I see that, the next year I put them as main entries. But last year, TanStack Start didn't even exist yet, so there was no way for me to bring it in. And moreover, when the survey ran, this year's survey, TanStack Start wasn't even at 1.0. So I was very surprised to see it getting so many mentions, 235, right? This is very unusual. Usually you can see the other ones all have around 29, 40 mentions. Ripple had maybe 35. 235 is a ton for such a new project that didn't even exist 1 year ago. So I think that's a pretty strong indicator that this is a project with a lot of potential, at least a lot of momentum. And if you look at the comments that people left on this question, you will see that you can filter them here. You can see that it's mostly people who say that I forgot to include TanStack Start. And next year I will definitely add it in. Next up, backend frameworks. Now, again, same pattern as before. You have one dominant player at the top and the other ones on the bottom in terms of usage. You might notice that there's no data for 2022 to 2024, and that's because I actually omitted backend frameworks from the survey, because the survey was getting so long that I had to do some cuts. But I decided to bring back backend frameworks this year due to community demands, I guess, and I'm glad I did because things are actually evolving quite a bit. So if you look in terms of satisfaction and then look at the rankings, the first 3 projects are all fairly new. So Hono and Nitro and Elijah. And Nitro is a new backend server developed by the Nuxt team, but I'm pretty sure you can use it outside of Nuxt. So they've kind of extracted their backend code into something that anybody can use, which is pretty cool. Elijah is also interesting because it's built on Bun, which itself is seeing quite a lot of momentum. And then finally, Hono, I think, is worth a mention because First of all, it was #1 in terms of satisfaction, and also it's being developed right here in Japan. I don't know if the creator is here today. They might be. Moving on to build tools. Of course, we have to talk about Vite when it comes to build tools, because Vite is just one of the main stories of web development for the last couple of years. And this time the pattern is a little bit different, right? Because you still have the dominant option at the top, but Vite is actually almost on the verge of catching up. So 84% usage compared to I think 87. And that's pretty unique, especially because Vite is #1 in terms of satisfaction. So what makes this pretty unique is that usually the most used tool, or almost most used in this case, and one with the highest satisfaction are kind of on opposite end of the chart, but here they're the same one. So I thought it was worth pointing out. If we look at usage rankings here, you have roll down almost at the bottom of the chart, but then looking at interest, it's actually #1. Now, interest means people who have, if people have heard about something, are they interested in learning about it? And so roll down actually has a very high ratio of, let's see, roll down, 80%. So 80%. So actually, let's look here. Awareness. So awareness is, do people know about it? So you can see that last year 33% knew about roll down, and this year 51% know about it. And visually you can see it's a huge progression. So 50% of respondents know about roll down. Of those 50%, 80% are interested in learning about it. And then if they do actually use it, well, 94% have a positive opinion. So by looking at those different ratios, you can kind of picture like a funnel, right? Where people first learn about something, then look into it, then use it. And this kind of tells you that roll down is probably going to be a big deal, because people, there's a high chance that if people go from one step to the next, they're going to keep going until they become roll down users. So this is a way where you can use this data to try and predict the future a little bit based on those trends. And roll down is Rust-based, which is also something worth mentioning, as you'll see later. Now we've been talking about builders, build tools, compilers. And I also asked people, well, how much do they use a build tool? Like, what proportion of their code is going through a build step? And you can see the vast majority of people either have most of their code go through a build step, or 100% of their code. So right now, at least, people who write JavaScript directly for the browser without this step are definitely in the minority, at least when it comes to respondents for this survey. I also wanted to ask people, well, okay, you use a build step, but why? What are the main advantages you get from that build step? And at the top here is static typing, followed by a better development experience, so things like hot module reloading, code optimization, code splitting, minification, and so on, and then template component transpilation, so supporting JSX, Svelte components, Vue components, so on. And we just saw static typing was the top reason why people use a build tool. And so let's talk about that a little bit, because who knows if we ever want to maybe not get rid of build tools, but maybe diminish their importance, well, we will have to find a way to actually support those things natively in JavaScript. So, talking about TypeScript, about types, I mean, of course, we need to mention TypeScript. And today, at least, in the survey, the vast majority of people use TypeScript. And in fact, the largest subgroup is people who only use TypeScript for the entirety of the code. By show of hands here, who only uses TypeScript, basically never writes any JavaScript? And who here mostly writes TypeScript? Yeah. So I think that's the direction the ecosystem is going. And when it comes to static typing, it's also shows up as the #1 feature that people think is missing from JavaScript. Yeah. Followed by standard library, signals, type operator, pattern matching, and so on. By the way, I'm pretty sure all of these have active TC39 proposals. Some of them might even get discussed this week at the TC39 meeting here in Tokyo. So things are definitely evolving in the JavaScript ecosystem right now. But I think it's pretty clear that static typing is, there's a strong demand for it. But the question then becomes, okay, assuming that we want to bring static typing support to JavaScript, how do we do it? And the consensus for 49% of respondents is to do it through type annotations, which is basically what TypeScript does. So you have types, but they don't carry over to the runtime, that the browser doesn't really do anything with them. Another option in some other languages would be to have runtime types, so types that are actually parsed by the browser. But I think it would probably be very difficult to implement in JavaScript, so I'm not sure how realistic this really is. And then you also have people who would not like to see types at all in JavaScript, but they are a minority. That being said, I think even if we do get native JavaScript types, it will always be possible to write JavaScript without them, because there's so many existing JavaScript code bases that still need to be supported. So let's talk a little bit about other languages, because other languages can also offer things that we could learn from. Now, when asked which other language they use, the #1 response was Python, followed by PHP and Bash. And Rust, which I mentioned earlier, is #7. So, still in the top 10, but not that high. What's interesting, I think, is I also asked people which specific features from other languages they would like to import into JavaScript. And #1 was pattern matching. #2, again, static typing. And then things like type operator, error handling, a standard library. But when ranking those answers by a language this time and not by feature, you can see that Rust is #1. So I think it's pretty cool, because even though it's not the most used language, when it comes to actually things that we would like to adopt into JavaScript, it is at the top. And again, you can get the detail of these answers and even filter them further down by subtopic or search by any keyword. So this is not, like I said, this is a preview. It's not published yet, but once it is, I encourage you to explore the data by yourself. So if you are feeling left out because you didn't get a chance to take part in the JavaScript survey I just showed, don't worry, because you can actually go and do the React survey for this year right now. I opened it a couple days ago. So I'll give you a couple seconds to look up the QR code if you want to. And then if you want to know when the data I just showed is officially published, you can sign up for our mailing list to be notified when that happens and get access to the full data set. So thank you very much for being here today. Also, thank you for participating.
Oh, thank you.
In the survey for those of you who have taken a survey before. Can I get a show of hands? Anybody who has taken one of those surveys before? Yeah, quite a few people. And yeah, please don't hesitate to come find me if you have any questions regarding the data or the surveys. Thank you.
Thank you.